When I was in college, I worked at a camp, and they had this thing called the three-man swing. It was this ginormous swing that we would harness three people together on this swing, and it would pull them way up, and it would drop them, and they would scream, and it was terrifying. But people loved it. Now, on this swing, we would tell people, there's one rule. This is the biggest rule. This is the one commandment you really, really have to follow. And it's whenever you're going on this thing, don't flip over upside down. Because the harnesses that you wear to go on this swing are not made to hold you sitting upside down. There's a chance if you flip upside down and you hang there for too long upside down, you'll slip right out of the harness, fall down on your head, and you might die. So this was the one biggest commandment. You have to follow this. If you don't follow this, the three-man swing is not going to be any fun because you're going to be laying on the ground with a broken neck, right? Well, Jesus here in Matthew chapter 22 tells us the most important rule in life that we could follow. The rule that if we don't follow this, nothing else matters. None of the rest of it matters at all. The Pharisees here are trying to trip him up. They're asking him all these questions to try and trick him into saying something bad. And one of them asks them in verse 36, "Teacher, which is the great commandment of the law?" The great commandment. He's asking this, what's the most important thing? Like, what's the one thing that I need to follow? And Jesus says to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment." So what Jesus does is he points back to something that's actually written in Deuteronomy 6 in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy 6:5. And he says, basically, if you miss this one, you miss everything else. It doesn't matter if you never steal, if you never murder anyone, if you never covet anything, if you never commit adultery. None of that matters. If you do everything like you're supposed to in life, but you do not love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, then none of it matters. You see, Jesus doesn't just want a bunch of rule followers. Jesus doesn't just want a bunch of people who look at the Ten Commandments and they're like, all right, check, 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 check. I've got all those things. I'm good. No. What Jesus wants is people whose hearts are totally devoted to Him in love. He wants people who dedicate everything that they do to His glory. He wants people whose every thought is informed by how wonderful He is. This is like if your mom tells you to do something and you're like, well, okay, I'll do it, but I don't like you. And whenever I get out of your house, I'm never coming back here again because you're terrible. No, like that's not okay. You might do the thing that she asks. You might be obedient, but you're not doing it out of love. What God wants is not for us to just do what He says to begrudgingly. No. He wants us to be obedient, but He wants us to be obedient out of a love that consumes our whole self, our heart, our mind, our soul. This love doesn't just stop with our vertical relationship with God, though. Let's keep reading in verse 39. A second is like it. So the Pharisee said, hey, what's the first and greatest commandment? And He's like, oh, I'll do you one better. I'll give you two. The second one, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands depend all the law and the prophets. So He's saying treat those around you like you would treat yourself. The same sort of care and compassion. Like whenever you are hungry, what do? You feed yourself. If you're sad, what do? You do whatever it takes to comfort yourself. He's saying have that sort of love that you have for yourself, have it for other people. When people are hungry, find a way that they can be fed. When people are sad, whenever they're hurting, have care and compassion for them. Love others as you love yourself. And He says, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. He's saying all the stuff in the Bible, all the Old Testament rules, the commandments, everything that has been said to this point rests on these things. To love God and to love others. We can live perfectly, but if we don't love God, we're nothing. We can follow all the rules just for ourselves, but if we don't love other people as we love ourselves, then we have nothing. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we love God? Well, we seek Him in His Word. We come to Him in prayer. We live lives that are devoted to Him. And He gives us the desires of our hearts. And how do we love other people? We dedicate our lives, number one, in love of God that overflows to our love of people. But if we dedicate our lives to service of other people and humble ourselves before other people and show them the love of God, then God works that love in our own hearts. So let's love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and let's love others as ourselves.